Hey everyone, I'm super excited to present our next guest for Founder Stories. Today's guest is an interesting story. He's still a college kid. He's still studying at the University of Waterloo, and he has built a product that has started as a project, turned into a product, and has gone viral. And I'm super excited to have him here with us for him to tell us the story of what he did so far, how he did it, the things he learned along the way, and that way we can get inspired. So first of all, Ian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad I could be here.
It's our pleasure. Ian, ZipCall, the product that you built, absolutely amazing. I came across it through a friend who said, let's get in a conversation, and he actually used ZipCall. And once I saw it, I was like, wow, this is amazing. But I want to go back before ZipCall, before Waterloo, before everything. Why don't you tell us, where are you from and what was your upbringing like?
For sure. So I grew up, first 9 years of my life, I lived in Delaware. So I was actually from the United States. For my 10th birthday, I moved to Canada, which is interesting. It's a lot colder than the US. I moved to Canada, grew up in a small little town called Kingston, finished up high school there. And then from there, I now study at Waterloo. I guess I can probably start with my introduction to computer science. The first time, it's kind of funny. The first time I started coding was in grade 10 or maybe grade 11. And the whole principle behind it was there's this one girl that I like, and when you're that young, the hormones are going through your brain, you don't think clearly. And I was like, okay, I think this one girl is taking this programming class. And if I take this class and then I sit beside her, all right, maybe we'll get somewhere. So I took the class for totally the wrong reason. First day class, she's not there. I'm like, what the hell? What's going on? I've been baited, but at this point, I'm like, okay, I'll just stick it out. So I start this class. I think we start off doing Python in our first year. So I start programming in Python. I am garbage. I am straight garbage. I think I failed like the first 2 assignments. It was not good. And in high school, I was used to like getting like perfect marks on everything. And, I was one of those kids who, whatever. But computer science, totally not easy for me. And it was really, really rough in the beginning. And I hated it. I remember thinking like, oh, it's so stupid. Why would I take this course? And then one day something just clicked. I don't know what it was. I think I just realized it's not so hard if you take the time and you just tinker around, and there's no rules. You don't have to play by the rules. It sounds a little bit silly, and I still haven't been able to quantify what that moment was and what caused it, but that happened kind of around the midpoint, and then I just fell in love. I would spend all my lunches working on these school projects. I'd ask my teacher if I could redo all my old ones. He's like, yeah, you can redo them because I see a lot of progress. Ended up getting 100 in the course, and then ended up winning the subject award that year, which was pretty exciting because I was like, okay, maybe we're onto something. But total 180, and I think that's kind of interesting because just because you start out programming and it could be very tricky in the beginning and it might not come to you easily, doesn't mean that it's not for you. So you can keep pushing, keep trying, experimenting. I certainly did not start off coding at like 9. I wasn't some coding phenom. I would say I just really liked it, and I had a bit of a knack for it once I started going, and that's what made all the difference.
Wow, that's amazing. But I have 2 questions. First of all, where's the girl now?
She's gone. We've moved on. She's not at Waterloo. Not at Waterloo.
Well, I hope she knows, due to her, we have to give her a ton of thanks and gratitude because of her, we have this phenomenal product, and eventually, which will lead you on your career. So you have her to thank.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I'm very fortunate that I had that misconception in my mind.
Right.
Yeah, no, without that, I definitely would not have gone the computer science route. I didn't really consider it. I mean, I knew I liked science, I liked math. Maybe I'll go into physics, but what's coding? You just sit behind a computer. It sounds kind of boring. But I tried it out. It's like, this is awesome.
Listen, our paths, we come into them in unique ways, very unique ways. Through divine providence, coincidences and things that we never thought that were possible will put us and direct us into the way of our calling to a certain degree. But, you mentioned such an interesting point. And, by the way, Ian, how old are you?
I am 19. I turned 19 like 5 months ago. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. Happy birthday.
Thanks.
But you mentioned such an interesting point as, especially for high school kids, and not just high school kids, but college kids. And not even college kids, young adults. You said that, you were a kid that was used to getting A's. You constantly got A's and A's and A's. And, to all of a sudden you take something that's somewhat challenging, and I'm assuming you probably failed your first test. And what happens is a lot of times, excuse me, people will get so brought down because of the fact and get so rejected about the fact that they reached a fail, they wouldn't give it another try, and they'll go about saying, you know what, I've got AIDS my whole life. All of a sudden, I have this. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. The fact that you overcame that, and I wanted to get the message over there is clear, but your mindset. I wanted to expound, if you're able to, relate and explain
Mhm.
more about your mindset, so other people could really like identify with that, and it can help so many people because not just high school kids and younger kids and college kids. It's adults too. When it's facing either sales rejection or facing something else, right away they go to the mindset, I'm not good enough. So I want you to tell us about your growth mindset and how you work on that and how you come across, improve.
For sure. So this is something that I'd love to be able to say that I've mastered and I know what I'm doing and I have the key to success, but I don't. I don't. What I can share with you is the tips that I use for myself that I think try and put me on the right trajectory. And by far, number one on my list is not comparing yourself to others, because there are so many things that you can beat yourself up over. Oh, I'm not as good looking as this guy. Oh, this guy's 6'4", I'm only 6 foot. Or man, this guy's going to Stanford, I'm only going to Waterloo. Or he's working at Google and I'm only working at Shopify. Right? It's so easy to get stuck in that. But instead, if you back off a little bit and say, okay, you know what? They've got their life. They're succeeding in that one particular area, but they also have their own problems. And I'm doing my journey. I'm doing my own thing. Maybe someone's beating me in sales this month. Maybe someone got a higher mark than me on the computer science assignment. But I'm going to look intrinsically and say, okay, am I progressing? Is this what I want to do? And from that perspective, that's how I try and assess and move forward. Because even within the class that initially I was failing, I was not doing well, which was, I was used to being number one, and all of a sudden you're not. And it's like, whoa, I don't like this. It's uncomfortable. Most people throw in the towel. Um, so I think I think you just have to you have to think long term and you have to make sure you focus on yourself and not worry too much about others. I think that's where a lot of the I'm not good enough comes from. Because if you put every single person in a vacuum, people probably wouldn't be that self-conscious and people would probably be pretty accepting of where they are and how they're performing. It's just the kind of brain's tendency to look at the guy beside you and rank yourself and put yourself on these hierarchies.
Sure. Yeah. It's all about being comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
And you literally like said it perfectly. Perfectly. I think, if you weren't going into computer science, you definitely should look at a career, becoming the next Tony Robbins. You know.
Tony Robbins. I think I'm a good foot shorter than Tony Robbins. Not is he an NFL player or something like that? I'm not sure, but
But either way, that's amazing. And going into that would definitely, it's such an incredible thing, having that growth mindset and knowing it's all about the effort and applying the effort.
yeah.
So, take us through. You fail, the girl's not there. You fail the first course. Then you finally make it to Waterloo, which is equivalent to Stanford in Canada, right? And then what happens is you all of a sudden, one night you're sitting there with your roommate and, you're fed up about, it could be Zoom, Google Hangouts and everything. And you decide, what the hell? Let me go ahead and create my own product. Why don't you tell us about like the history of how ZipCall came to be?
So ZipCall was born in our Toronto apartment. I was living with my best friend at the time. I was working for Accenture, which is a big consulting firm, and we recently just started work from home. Canada, specifically Toronto, the city I was living in, was on lockdown. So I was feeling pretty lonely, wasn't really able to see anyone. I was like, man, this sucks. I was like, hey, I reached out to one of my other friends. I'm like, yo, let's hop on a call. And he's like, okay, let's download Skype. So I download Skype. I have to sign up for like a Microsoft account. They want like a phone number and email. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I did it. It worked. It was okay. And I want to talk to my other friends. Like, hey, let's do this over Discord. And I was like, okay, what the heck? Like, and then there's Zoom, and then there's WebEx, and there's all these different platforms. Like, why isn't there something that just works? Like even just getting our Zoom meeting started today, it took us like 5 minutes to figure out audio problems. I'm pretty savvy when it comes to figuring out inputs and outputs. Like I know what I'm doing, and if I can't figure it out, 90% of the population probably isn't going to enjoy the experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just fed up with this. I was like, isn't there a better way to do it? And from there, I kind of defined my minimum viable product, my MVP, or really just what I wanted to build for myself. And I can kind of talk about why I think that's important to build for yourself in a bit. But I knew I wanted to be on the internet, had to be on the web, no apps to download, no signing up for accounts, nothing like that. I wanted to keep user friction as low as possible. Because at the end of the day, my friends don't want to sign up for an account, so why would I make them? yeah, and I guess I just have a little bit more back before that. I spent before this, I spent like a good 3 or 4 days just running around my apartment, just kind of swearing under my breath, like, I hate Zoom, I hate this, just complaining. And my roommate's, well, man, if you hate it so much, why don't you just build it? And so he ended up having this bet. He bet me I couldn't build real time video chat, and I was like, all right, I'll take it. I'll take you on. Clearly, I won the bet. Wish we put some money down on that. But yeah, I ended up just being really pissed off with the existing solutions. I couldn't find anything that just worked.
Right. Well, you see, most solutions and most founders and most startups are born out of an existing problem that the founder had, they experienced. And that's essentially what came to you. But you touched upon a point over there you mentioned about why it's so important to build a minimal viable product for yourself. And why don't you talk about that and the product you actually built for yourself in the beginning?
So the product, so I guess I'll say the product I built in the beginning, it was really terrible. It would crash all the time. It didn't have a UI. It had the didn't have it could only support two people in a call at once, so there was no multiple rooms. It wouldn't automatically scale up and down the video quality, so you'd hope that it would choose the right bit rate or resolution, and that'd be the end of it. And if you didn't get it right, either you suffered from a subpar video quality or something that was really laggy. There was a lot of features that were really missing. But the benefit was it was enough to get my palate wet. It was enough to get me to that aha moment. So I tried it out and was like, oh, I can do this. Okay, there is something here. And it motivated me like hell. I was like, oh my gosh, like I can actually build this now. So I think it's very important to know what are the key set of features that can get me going and get me excited, that I can actually take this to even things smaller, like, okay, what's the minimum feature set that I can, put on my resume and post on a GitHub and people get excited. Right. Yeah. And yeah, and I really tried to keep ZipCall as light as possible. I tried to avoid something that's called feature creep, which I'm sure we're talking about ZipCall, I can talk about later, but minimum viable product was definitely minimum and maybe not so viable.
So then how'd you scale? So going from there, you built the minimal viable product. Take us through the history of it. And all of a sudden, till it grew to what the stage that it is right now. And we'll definitely have we have a bunch of things to touch upon over there, but take us through that whole entire history.
Yeah, so it took me about 2.5 weeks to make this really crappy version. Started using it with my mom because, I wanted to show it off my mom, called a couple of my friends. They started sharing with theirs. Before I knew it, I had, like 100 people had tried it out. They absolutely roasted me. They gave me so much great feedback. They sent me emails of, this didn't work, or that didn't work, or you embarrassed me here. And I was like, okay, this is great. And it's important that you take that in stride. You don't let that, define you. You just recognize it, address it, and move forward. And from there, I think one of my friends suggested, like, hey, this is pretty cool. Like, why don't you share this with the internet? And I was like, okay, all right, I guess I'll put it on the internet, see what people think of it. So I thought, what's the easiest way I can get this out to the world? I was like, all right, I guess I'll just post it to Reddit because that doesn't take much time. Right? I don't have to run Google ads. I don't have to do anything like that. So I posted to, I think, 20 or 30 different subreddits, like r/JavaScript, r/entrepreneur, a whole lot of them. Posted it, closed my laptop, went out to go throw a frisbee, came back, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm on the front page of like half of these.
Wow.
And I was lucky because the way I knew a little bit about Reddit and the way that it works, that if you do too much self-promotion, generally you'll just get your post deleted, which happened to me in a couple subreddits. But the way I worded it came from more of a perspective of, hey, I built this thing and you should check it out and it inspired me and you should build your own stuff, less of try my product. And that was really important because people, I think, had a lot of sympathy for me. And they gave me a lot of feedback. First day, in the front page, a bunch of subreddits, got about 10,000 users. And what's great about that is it leads to a whole bunch of other growth. And I think it leads to this bigger overarching kind of idea is that velocity doesn't really matter, right? If you think about when you're in an airplane, you're going like 800 miles an hour, but you don't really feel it.
Right.
Whereas if you are standing still and all of a sudden a car crashes into you, you're not going 800 miles an hour, but you accelerated really quickly. Same thing when you're coasting on the highway, you slam the brakes, you really feel that. And a similar principle applies to a lot of these ranking algorithms. So I wasn't ranked on Google at all. ZipCall.io would not rank. There's ZipCall.com actually, which I really hope they don't sue me for trademark infringement. So, but because I had this massive spike in users, they see me go from 0 to something that's measurable. Right. I then spiked on Google, so then became the #1 search result on Google from pretty much nothing, which I certainly did not have as many users as ZipCall.com at the time, but because of the acceleration, I got ranked higher. More importantly, I got pushed to the front of GitHub. I was #1 trending project on GitHub for, I think, like 3 days or something along those lines, which is bananas. Like, that's GitHub. That's where all code lives. And that was where I got a ton more users, a ton more people went through my code and roasted it. But again, the main thing I want to say is I think acceleration is everything. If you have a lot of acceleration really, really quickly, this can push you to the top of these lists, like Product Hunt, Hacker News, yeah, a bunch of great places. And that's very, very helpful. And that can impact you a lot.
Right. Well, you mentioned like two interesting points, especially one thing about distribution and the second thing about acceleration. Distribution, like you said, look at the other channels, Reddit and the other things and GitHub and, getting to the other places where people are actually going to hang out and will actually participate and use your thing and use your product. Sending, trying to get ranked on Google or sending, cold emails, hey, here's my product, check it out. People are not necessarily going to go ahead, but Reddit is a place that's I love that strategy. Reddit is a place that people come, and not only they come use it, they will also probably come and kill you because, they love to roast you. So.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, I remember I almost deleted ZipCall, and maybe someone else can resonate with this. And I look back now and I'm like, oh, that was so silly. But I like to think I'm a decently tough guy. I have somewhat thick skin, but I knew what I was building. I knew what I wasn't for the most part. But I got a couple really nasty Reddit comments. 90% overwhelmingly positive, which is, if you know Reddit, that's pretty surprising, right? Like, so I had it easy. I had a couple like 10% that were people were calling me liars, and I was self-promoting, and I was making all these ridiculous claims or whatever. And I'll admit, some of the claims on the website landing page were a little bit over the top. So I went back and I fixed that, and I was like, okay, they were right. But nothing too crazy. Like, it wasn't like I was hurting or harming anyone. But it really, really hurt when people write these like paragraphs that are just crapping on your product and crapping on what you've done, and they're calling you like names. I'm like, what the heck? And they're like, he's probably a horrible software engineer. It feels bad. But you get over it. Don't let the haters get to you. It sounds stupid, and I don't think I knew what that meant. Mm-hmm. But anyone who's published anything online, whether it be a podcast, book, art, like literally anything, there will be haters, but you just have to do your own thing. So don't worry about them. Sure. That was something that, yeah, it really got under my skin a couple of days. I almost wanted to give up because of that, which fortunately I didn't.
Yeah, thank God he didn't. It goes like this. The people that matter don't care, and the people that don't care don't matter. People that care don't matter. So people like that. And you're always going to have to ignore the haters because you're going to have to cross every single thing you do in entrepreneurship, in life, in building a startup, in a career, everything, relationships. You're constantly going to have it. But the second point you touched upon, which is also so interesting, is the acceleration. Mm-hmm. It's not about, like you said, you gave the example of the airplane. The big thing about the airplane is staying in one place, going down the what's it called again? The runway, exactly. And going from 0 to 400 to taking off. Instead of going from 800, 800 to 1,000, it's more important from the 0 to the 400.
Exactly.
Going over there. Which is so important for acceleration. We think that we're going to build it, all of a sudden I'm going to get 1 million users overnight. No.
And I guess this can lead me to another thing, because a lot of people have sent me these emails, reach out to me saying, hey, how do I grow my product? How do I, my favorite buzzwords, how do I growth hack, right? Because they look at me and they're like, oh my God, like 100K users in 1 month with like, 0 spent on advertising. Like, that's next level. And I'm not going to claim I'm some marketing genius. A lot of luck, a lot of amazing product timing. Yeah, great timing. That's all. I'll leave it at that. But growth hacking, I will say consistent growth over growth hacking.
Right.
If you're growth hacking your way to get 10,000 users overnight, 20,000 users in a day, whether that be by buying ads, by some form of guerrilla marketing, which can be great. I'm not saying don't growth hack and don't guerrilla market in the beginning. That's what I didn't work for me. But before you do that, you need to make sure that you can get consistent growth. And that comes by finding really great product market fit, making sure that your products are really, really sticky. In my opinion, the #1 metric shouldn't be monthly active users. It should be churn. Right? When people try your product, do they love it? Do they hate it? When they try it, how long do they need to spend there so that they're going to come back? Or when they do come back, how frequent is that? Those are the metrics you should be looking at, because in my mind, that tells you how great your product is and how much product market fit you have.
Right. And how far you built that? You built that till now. So what's your churn rate now?
Churn, I'm not focusing. So I guess I'm a bit of a liar. I say I focus on the statistics, but I don't look at the statistics anymore. There was a point where I was checking my Google Analytics like every 2 hours because like, oh my gosh, users, this, that, and I was freaking out on all of this. But now I'm much more hands off. Churn isn't as amazing as I'd like. There's a number of, and I'll be very open about this. I'm not going to tell you ZipCall is the greatest thing in the world. There's a number of pretty open bugs that people have reported to me that I know how to solve, but I just don't have time right now. And I think that's probably one of the problems that are driving people away. But the core product I still think stands as it is.
Sure. So with all this fame that you got in overnight from building something, what does that make you feel?
Uh, it's both amazing and I get incredible opportunities, and it's pretty bad at the same time. So this could sound a little crazy, but when I moved to Toronto, I was living with a new roommate, had a new job. There's a lot of uncertainty in my life, but it was amazing. The first 3 months, the pre-zip call days, I had a journal where I'd write down like just like 3 bullet points how my day went. I kid you not, for the first 90 days straight, I did not have a single sad day. Not a single sad day. And that's because the amazing people around me that I got to work with in the community, it was amazing. I've never had a period like that in my life. And then I create ZipCall, we're still doing great. But then ZipCall starts to take off. And that was probably my most unhappy period, believe it or not. When everyone was telling me, oh my gosh, you've launched something successful, when people were throwing money at me out the yin yang, I was probably my least happy. I was the most stressed. I was the least focused. And I don't know, I didn't feel like me. I'm not saying that's going to be for everyone, but I share that just so you know that it's not all sunshines and rainbows. I remember it was I guess I probably should call it like Hell Week or something like this, but this was when I hit around 100K users. I made a couple posts on LinkedIn that I guess got out to my network. And I just had VCs emailing me like crazy. Like I was taking at one point like 10 different calls with venture capital, VCs or venture capital firms. I'm sure you guys already know that. Every single day, and these people are just throwing like hundreds of thousands of dollars at me. The first call I took with the VC offered me 300 grand to drop out of school. And I'm like, what the heck? This is like a website, like, what it does, right? Like people go on, you talk to each other, there's a couple of users for it, but like, what the heck? And it just blew my mind. And then I started spiraling. I couldn't really sleep anymore. Fortunately, I'm not like that anymore. So that's temporary. You adjust. But the initial reaction wasn't amazing, I would say. But now it's a lot of fun because I get a lot of really great opportunities. One of them is I get to work for Shopify. Right. Almost no one's hiring interns right now during the pandemic. And I have a lot of my friends who are 4.0 GPA students. They've worked at IBM, places that are better than my previous work experience. They're straight up just unemployed right now. It is a really bad job market. But because of ZipCall, I've been very fortunate that people have offered me internships, and I've been able to market myself as, hey, I built this cool thing, you want to hire me? So that's been really great. Also got to go on a couple of podcasts. That's been super fun, like this one. I also went on Syntax FM. That was the first big one I did. I talked over with Wes and Scott for a little bit. But and I guess I gave a talk at a Facebook Developer Circles event the other day about ZipCall and kind of creating it. So it's been interesting. And if there's one thing I can say for people listening to me is, I am not some genius. I am not like, I am one of you. I promise that this feels weird that people are asking me what I'm on about. And, how'd you create this? Like I get emails like, how do I learn to code like you? How do I become an amazing software engineer and, work at Fortune 500 companies like you? And I'm like, I don't know. I just do it. I'm a normal guy. I study. But I hope that's very empowering that I'm not some anomaly.
I have no words. Like I am totally inspired and like emotionally moved right now. Like you just mentioned, it really, and you said so many incredible things. And the point is not about focusing on the good time, because the good time you'll have a tremendous amount of people, but it's on the bad time, and it's vice versa. It can work both ways. But focusing on the bad time, that hell week that you went through. People think I'm going to build a startup. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to have money throwing at me. I'm going to live the high life. People don't realize how hard it could be. Even though you had good problems and so many things being thrown at you, but you stressed to galore.
I think there's a big misconception. So just to put a disclaimer out there, I haven't taken any VC money. I haven't raised any capital, which is amongst a lot of the people I've been consulting with is a bit of a controversial decision. But I think people should realize that raising a round of like $1 million or raising $300,000 or whatever it is, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. A lot of people start a tech company because they want to be their own boss. I don't want to go to the 9 to 5. I don't want to have this manager running my life for these 8 hours a day. They don't realize when you raise capital and a VC now gives you funding and you have other external investors and angels come in, they now run your life. They run your company. You're not your own boss. And they don't just run it for 8 hours a day. They now run you 24/7 and they own your new child, which is your startup. Yeah. So if you're going through this route to make a startup, which I don't recommend anyone tries to make a startup. I recommend you try and build a product. Mm-hmm. It's not the easy route. It's not the easy route. It's way easier to get a comfy job at Google and make $300,000 a year than it is to, take some crapshoot on a startup, maybe raise some capital and then rip your hair out for 2 years and pray that it works. Right. It's a long shot.
Wow. Ian, where's your mother? I want to thank her for raising such an incredible person. The humility you have and your wisdom beyond your years. It's amazing. So you mentioned before a certain specific thing. I'd love to you expound that more. What were the misconceptions you came across while building your product? And you touched the point. I don't want to touch upon, not necessarily from the product standpoint. You could get into that if you like, but more about the fact, like you said, I'm just a regular dude. That's it. Mm-hmm. So go ahead over there.
Yeah. So I guess perhaps the one moment that made it real to me that I had something was yes, hitting a lot of users. That was pretty cool. When people started throwing money at me, when I had Silicon Valley firms that were reaching out saying, hey, drop out of school, move out here, we'll make sure you have enough money to hire yourself 2-3 software engineers, get you like a business development guy, and we're gonna get this off the ground. That's when I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually how companies get started. So if you ever wonder how Facebook's born or how Google's born, it's not some obscure process. It's probably 2 college guys or girls, anyone, sitting around, have some problem that creates some cool product that they don't think is that cool. They think it's fun for them, but they don't think it's anything big. Some investors like, yo, wait, we can make some money off this. You give them some money, they tinker around, and all of a sudden you're in explosive growth. So I guess the first myth I'll say is capital is not that easy. It's not that hard to find. Capital is pretty easy to get. I'm living proof of it. I had, these VCs were calling me. I was a total, I was stumbling over my own words. I was an absolute idiot. I had no plan for monetization, no plan for growth, no plan for anything, right? I was like, I just made some website. And they still were throwing money at me. So if capital is your problem, if you're thinking, oh, I don't know how we're going to raise money, I don't know this, that's a silly problem. In my opinion, the hardest problem is either A, building the team to build the product, or B, I won't even say building the product. I'll say thinking about the product and managing it. Right. I think that's probably the hardest part, like the idea behind it. That's much harder to get than raising a $500,000 round. Sure, raising, $10 million from Sequoia, that's great, and that opens a lot of doors for you, but that's not the hard part, in my opinion. That's kind of one myth I'll say. And I guess maybe the second myth I'll talk about is, so I built this in JavaScript, right? The entire thing is built in JavaScript. It's not that complicated. You can view all the source code on GitHub. I am not a JavaScript developer. Let alone do I know anything about WebRTC and all the technologies that power real-time video communications. I am I'm not. I'm not the best in my programming classes. I'm not even the best coder out of my friends. I mean, someone might say that, but I disagree. You don't need to be a coding genius to get somewhere. You don't need to be 4.0 GPA to build something that people want. Right. In fact, it can be deceptively simple, deceptively easy to build, like ZipCall. ZipCall was built in like 3 weeks, right? It ain't that complicated, the core fundamentals of the product. So if you're worried about not being, okay, I need to get my master's from MIT, I need to be studying this, I need to read this, and I need to make sure I'm the absolute, optimize this and optimize that. Stop it. You don't need to. Just get building. Build something. Maybe if you have something, great. If you don't, whatever, right? So coding is not often, you don't need to learn all the nitty gritty. And I guess that kind of is my strategy for a lot of things when it comes to computer science, is I don't really have a ton of patience and a lot of time to focus on, okay, this small syntax thing or this one little bit of the language of how this one compiler works. All these really, really small, under the fingernails stuff that really great software engineers get really good at. Mm-hmm. But what you can focus on and what's very easy to do, it's learn how to Google, right? I am more of a Googler than I am a software engineer. I'm not joking when I say when I write code, I probably spend more time on Google than I do in my actual text editor, like where I write code. So being able to Google and find projects and hack together code, that's the way to do it. Um, and maybe for people that don't work at, these big tech companies or in tech at all,
Mhm.
these people, they are not so different than you. They probably just graduated from a better school because, from whatever their upbringing was, and they probably just grinded a couple of coding boot camps and tutorials, and now they're making $300,000 a year at Facebook. I have friends that work at Facebook. I know how they code. When they have a problem, they Google it. They're not any different than, Joe Schmo on the street. They just probably know how to Google a little bit faster than the average person because they've practiced it.
Yeah.
But being able to Google and learn quickly, that's really important. That's something I think helped me build ZipCall. Um, I think that's kind of the big thing I want to say. You don't need to be a coding genius, and capital is not that hard to find. That was just so surprising to me. I was like, wow, people are really offering money. That's pretty crazy.
Right. So why don't you drop out of school and take the money, go to Silicon Valley, and build your ZipCall?
It's a great question. There was a good 2 weeks where I was not sleeping because I was trying to figure out what I should do. I think a lot of it comes down to if this is the first thing I've built, like this is the first real thing I've actually built, and I'm having traction, like this probably isn't going to be my last idea. Maybe that sounds a little bit cocky, but if I can do this once, I'm sure I can find something else and I'll have something bigger and better. So for me, I view this almost as like the training wheels for whatever comes next. And I think there's too much risk involved in dropping out of school. I still want to stay on the traditional track. Unfortunately, I didn't come from a very rich upbringing. We're not exactly loaded by any stretch of the imagination. So I need to make sure I can secure the 9 to 5 so I can send some checks back home and take care of the family.
Right. Wow. I'm telling you, I'm amazed. That's incredible. Like humility and the things you talk about and your purpose. Something that every coder, but not every coder, every single person in the universe, especially in kids going into college, we're thinking where the dreams are starting to be born and built. They have to listen to this message of what you're saying. It's so important. So what's
I've been
next?
blessed that I've had some interesting experiences I can talk about.
That's incredible. Incredible. So what is next for ZipCall?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. At one point, I was in acquisition talks, and I was gonna kind of sell off ZipCall, get off my plate, focus on the next big thing. I'm still having some talks with some people. We'll see what happens with that. I probably won't end up selling ZipCall. I think there's more long-term potential in it, but I'm always open to new offers. But as far as the product, right now I have an alpha version that supports group calling. Group calling is really hard to do, just for the record. Doing for reference, solving audio calling, like doing like really great, calling over the internet, that's like a 1x problem. And then doing really great one-on-one video calling, that's maybe like a 10x problem. And then solving like group video, that's like 100x or 1,000x problem. So much harder. But I've had a couple of people help me build an alpha version for that. So that's coming in the pipeline, hopefully next month or so. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep building the product. Once I'm out of school and I'm not, getting my ass kicked in all these courses, I'll probably start really digging into the features and the analytics and seeing how I can actually grow it and really improve the stability of the platform. Because at the end of the day, I like to use it. I built it for myself, and I'm gonna continue using it for myself.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, Ian, do me a favor. Don't forget me when you become big. You know.
Of course.
There's so many more questions I have, and so many things to go into. But the main thing I was specifically to focus on, and I think what we've got from our conversation that's going to help so many people, is knowing that first of all, you don't have to be someone special. You don't have to have a unique background, coming from very wealthy parents and going to the right schools. You need to be able to, first of all, the ability to change your mindset, to work, to apply the effort, never to back down. You have to have the ability to work hard and have, and big dreams, dream big, that you could do it. You don't have to be someone special in order to build something big or to accomplish something. Every single person has the ability within them in order to do that. And you drove that message home no better way. and not just drove the message home, you're a living testament of it through building something that went viral and it's continued to go viral. And I'm sure it's going to have a ton of success. You did it. You did it.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. That means a lot. And again, at risk of repeating myself, I wanna say, you don't have to be a genius. These people who created Google, who are running Facebook, they are no smarter than you. They probably just came from a little bit better of a background. I know these people. I am hopefully going to become one of these people sometime soon. So whatever your ideas are, just start building, just start trying. Don't be afraid to fail, and just learn along the way and have fun. You gotta have fun. If you're dragging your nails to build stuff that you don't want to build and you're doing things you hate, that's probably not the way to do it. I was lucky. I built ZipCall for myself, so I loved it, and that was just such an intrinsic motivator. I remember there was points where I would stay up till 2 a.m. just because I couldn't stop coding on it. It was so much fun. I'd code till I'd pass out. I would wake up at 7 a.m. the next day. I literally wouldn't even get out of bed, just roll up and pick up the laptop. I did that for like 3 weeks straight because I just was like, this is so much fun. Like, who doesn't want their own video chat platform? And that's the kind of passion that will drive most people to build these things that that are pretty great. I think that's kind of the way to go about it.
Right. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Ian, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm telling you, I know a tremendous amount that people are going to benefit from this. Not just entrepreneurs and not just investors who will probably hound you after this, but even regular people that are not involved in technology or younger people that are listening to this. This will definitely inspire them and take them to the next level. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.